Hey everybody, I want to welcome you to the Houndsman XP Podcast. This is our Thursday edition that we call The Truth About Coonhunting, or otherwise known as The Truth. It's normally hosted by Josh McKellis under the Houndsman XP Podcast brand, and Josh is doing a super job with this, and I just wanted to reach out there and tell all of you thank you for the support that you've shown Josh, the support that you've shown Houndsman XP. Houndsman XP will strive every week to bring you the highest quality guests that we can find. And one thing about, in this particular episode of The Truth, I sit down with Jerry Moll. Jerry is getting ready to retire from PKC. And we're just going to recap his career. We're going to talk about things he's seen in the sport of competition coon hunting. Not only since he's been a professional with 2 different registries, but also since he started in the early 80s and talk about coon hunting. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Jerry's always a straightforward guy, and I can't think of a better guest we could have to feature on The Truth. So if you just started listening to the podcast, and because of this segment, we appreciate you. But I also want to tell you that you can help support this segment of the podcast by going to our website at www.houndsmanxp, and you can click the support button, and it will take you into a Patreon page where you can support this show and keep us on the road, bringing you this kind of entertainment and give you something to listen to when you're running up and down the road with those hounds, competing at the highest levels and, you know, trying to bring home the big money, and you guys are burning it up out there. Hope we can keep you awake on the road. But, guys, we're going to dive right into it with The Truth and Jerry Moll. Houndsman XP Nation, I'm excited to be sitting down with a guy that we've got a long history together, and my buddy Jerry Moll on the podcast again.
Glad to be here again.
You know, the podcast you did with us is still one of our highest rated podcasts.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it is. It might be because it's one of the oldest and people just listen to it, have a chance to listen to it a lot.
That could be.
No, it was good. But, Jerry, the reason I wanted to talk to you to get things started, you know, just for the podcast is, or for this episode, is you recently announced that you're retiring from PKC.
Yes, it was a big change and a hard decision to come to. There was a lot of soul searching for me and my wife Brenda, and we, talked about it a lot over the last year and a half. And I think what took us over the edge was my surprise heart incident that started early in the year and ended with my surgery in March and recovery following that. And it was just one of those things that we decided it was time.
Yeah. Well, you look great.
Thanks.
Yeah. It looked like you've even shed a few pounds.
I have a couple, and actually after my surgery I lost more than that, but I found most of them.
And what you didn't find, I found for you. Yeah, no doubt. But we go back a long way, Jerry, and I mean, we've done all kinds of stuff together as far as for the benefit of this lifestyle of being a houndsman. You know, I still look at the photos opportunity that we took out here that night with your kids and you, and we displayed those photos on displays at major events and shows all across Indiana for the DNR, the Department of Natural Resources here in Indiana, and trying to build that relationship between especially the game warden and the coon hunters. And I think it was a good thing that we did that. And then our work with the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance together, founding that organization and different things. But so I'm happy for you. I really am. I'm happy that you're ready to start this new chapter in life.
Yeah, I'm excited about it, and it's something that just since the Labor Day Classic a couple weeks ago, things have been settling down a little bit already, and I've been working in the background helping Shane Patton get started in his new role as Director of Field Operations for PKC, and the demands and the stress, those levels have already started to pare down a little bit. So it's a welcome feeling.
I noticed that your new voicemail message on there say, if you have a PKC question, don't bother me. No, it says call Roger Dale or Shane Patton.
Right. Yeah, I probably won't get to the extent of putting on there, this is Jerry, I'm retired, don't call me anymore.
It'll be a bit. Yeah. So tell us what the future is for PKC to fill that position as you know it.
Well, first off, I think in hiring and selecting Shane Patton for the role, I don't think, as far as the folks out there that would be available for such a role, like I told Roger, I don't think he could have picked anyone better than Shane Patton. He's young, energetic, and he's been involved in both the fall and the spring super stakes, the World Championship and the National Championship for several years, helping. He's judged all of our major event finals, whether that be a World Hunt or a truck hunt, National Super Stakes. I mean, he's been in the thick of it, so he knows a lot from the handling and judging standpoint and how the hunts work, and he knows a good bit from the administration side, just working with us for the last several years at those big events. He's a friendly guy, a lot friendlier than I am, and very likable. Doesn't know a stranger, so I think he's going to be an extremely good fit.
How much of that job is public relation type work?
It is public relation a good bit, as far as dealing with members or customers, however you want to term them, on a daily and nightly basis. As far as outside the membership with public relations, mostly working with cities and towns as far as venues and stuff like that is most of the extent of the public relations. Mm-hmm. Beyond that. But sometimes you turn into more of an arbitrator or a policeman rather than a customer service type person, and sometimes that doesn't go over well depending on which side of the answer you're on. if you get the answer you like, then Jerry's a pretty good guy, and if you don't, then he's not such a good guy.
Well, I think the thing I've always admired about you is the fact that anytime there was a question or a decision to be made, you always referred to what the rules said. It wasn't how you felt about it. It's not whether you liked it or not. It wasn't, and that stands true from everything when we used to work on legislative issues with the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance. I've seen you do that, behind as a hunt director or at the director's desk or wherever it is or in your role. But you've always been that guy. It's like, guys, this is what the rule says.
Yeah, and I've taken some criticism for that. Before my time at PKC, a lot of those questions, well, I should say all those questions tended to be answered off the cuff. And some of the complaints or criticisms that we heard were that depending on who you ask, you might get a different answer. Mm-hmm. So the one thing I started to do immediately was if there was questions on the PKC board or Facebook, either one, I would try to answer the question and then quote the rule, or if the rule itself answered the question completely, then I would just post the rule and I've had people comment, why don't you just tell us the answer instead of posting a rule? And, my answer to that is, well, I really want you to read the rule.
Yeah. What's your tagline? To be prepared?
Hunt your dog, read the blue book, and your good book.
That's right. That's right. I always loved that. Well, as you work for 2 different registries.
Yes.
And give us a rundown for the listeners that might not know who Jerry Moll is.
Okay. Well, I guess my first step in getting more involved in the back end of competition coon hunting was in the 90s. I spent, I don't really recall the time frame, but maybe a year or 2 as a director at large with the Tree Walker Association of UKC, the TWBFA. And
we're talking back in the 1900s, right?
90s, yeah. So it's been a while ago, believe it or not. And so I did that for a while, and then I got more, in the late 80s to in early 90s, I probably got more involved in PKC hunting than I did in UKC, and I kind of gravitated away from UKC. And as I was becoming more involved in the PKC hunts, the owner at that time, Larry Meeks, asked me if I would run for Walker Breed president. And so I did, and I eventually won. And then once I won that, he asked me to join the executive board as a consulting member or whatever you want to call that, to tackle issues that PKC wanted to put in front of a group, and that was a group of 5 national directors that they called the executive board. And so I sat on that until probably from early 2000 to November 2004 is when Steve Fielder asked me to join him at the AKC. And so I started working for Steve at that time, kind of unofficially in November 2004 and December, but I actually became a paid employee at AKC the first of the year in 2005. And I worked with Steve there from then through September of 2010. And that's when I started went to PKC, work for Roger Dale. My roles were similar at both places. The main difference was at AKC, it was kind of a restart. AKC had a coonhound program. Of course, they purchased ACHA initially, way back, and their coonhound program was kind of faltering, and that's why they hired Steve to come on and revitalize it. And so, even though there was a program there, we were in many ways starting anew. We started with a new set of rules, new set of policies, and a new way to tackle the animal. And so when I came back to PKC, of course, everything was already solid and steady and set up and ready to go. So that was one big difference. Probably my biggest surprise to taking on the director of field operations job at PKC is how administrative the job is, meaning that a tremendous amount of the job is just doing computer work and, managing from an administrative standpoint, just details. And then the rest of it involves, like you started talking about, the customer relations part of it.
Right. So, and I said public relations, but you're right. It was customer relations. You know, big difference there when you start thinking about that. But so, how much PKC employees are allowed to compete in PKC events? How many PKC events have you hunted in?
Well,
since you started working there.
And I was telling some guys the other day when we were talking about the same subject that you would think that working for PKC or working for any registry would be an ideal situation to get to hunt a lot and spend time talking about dogs and, hunting the events and so on and so forth. Well, when I first started working for PKC, I did hunt in the events on a limited basis, and I quickly found out that number one, I didn't have time to get my dog ready properly, and so number two, I wasn't ready to go to the event. Even though I was there and competing, I wasn't ready, and probably nothing more disappointing to me than that. And I think I even hunted with you a couple times during that time, and I was disgusted because my dog wasn't performing for the obvious reason that I hadn't been hunting her.
Yeah.
And so you become that part of the realization comes pretty quickly that you can't do both. And then the second part of that is that after you work with registry and rule and regulation issues all day long and talk about them all day long with hunters and all day and night, I should say, you really don't want to go to an event and talk about the same thing.
Right.
Now, that doesn't keep you from going out in the woods and spending time out there on your own, alone with the dog, and that's the kind of things that I enjoyed. And the only time I really had time to do that was, during coon season when everything kind of settled down.
After the super stakes and the world hunt and all that stuff.
Sure.
That's the only time I could ever get you,
yeah,
to get out and go hunting is when you had that much time. But,
yeah.
You competed at a high level for, through the 90s, and that's what got you that recognition to be, talk about a couple of those, tell us 5 minutes, recap Salt Creek Kennels. Tell us about two of your favorite dogs and what you did with them.
Well, it'd be hard to nail down just a couple of favorites, but some of my favorites would have been the female that I competed in my very first PKC hunt with, and that was a dog I called Salt Creek Ann 2. I went to DuPont, Indiana, and I think 1988 or 89, and entered my first PKC hunt, and got in that night and split, and I can't remember what the exact amount of money was, but I got like $140, and I thought that was just awesome compared to going, to UKC hunt and getting a plaque. But
right.
So that was, Ann 2 was in my mind an exceptional dog. She did never receive the recognition I think she was capable of, just because I didn't put her where she needed to be. At that time, I was working full-time and going to school about 3-4 nights a week. So I didn't get a lot of hunting on her. And the fact that she won what she won was probably in spite of me instead of because of me. She placed in a Little World Hunt, I believe it was ACHA then. And she won the Lee Crawford event at Walker Days. And she placed 11th in the UKC World Hunt. And a few other things. So she was definitely one of my favorites. And then fast forward into the 90s, I had a dog named Molly Ann. She was went back to my old Annie dog on the bottom and out of Naylor, and she was an exceptional dog. I didn't win any major events with her, although she did compete in them and made a showing. But she was the mother of my Jenny female, and as far as a competition dog, she was the one I had the most success with. I wouldn't say she was necessarily my favorite dog, but she was definitely in the top 4.
Yeah.
And she was just in a class all her own. And when I lost my job due to downsizing at a corporation in Indianapolis in the early 2000s, I sold her to John Strickland, and he had some good success with her as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are your lifetime earnings in PKC? We're asking all the guests on the truth side of it.
I'm thinking somewhere around.
Don't look mine up; it'll be embarrassing.
I'd have to look, to be honest with you. I've not.
I should
checked recently.
I should have.
I can tell you this: it hasn't changed much in the last 10 years. Well, I'll have to think about that and look at it for a minute.
Yeah, just give it. We can come back to that, but the thing that I have observed, Jerry, is you've always been a guy that's been successful, whether it was with PKC or it was with your hounds or things like that. And I don't know of a guy that is a harder working guy than you are. Anybody that I ever talk to, you go to any event, you go if you're getting a dog ready, that's how we met. Which dog was that, Molly Ann?
That was Molly Ann.
Yeah, that's how we met. As you were in the field getting a dog ready for the hunt. When everybody else I couldn't find anybody else out hunting. Just driving down the road, and there you are. So we had that, but the Hoosier Tree Dog Alliance, all that stuff. I mean, that comes from that German heritage background, that people always talk about the hard work and ethic, and that's what made you successful.
Yeah, and I have to attribute that to my upbringing. My dad's theory on coon hunting is that's for lazy people that don't want to work. And so you would say I would have had a big job winning him over about convincing him it was okay to coon hunt, but I never did win that argument.
I wonder how much my dad was the same way, and I wonder how much that affected because there's times when I'm hunting that I feel guilty that I'm not working, but then I realize that there's people that actually work doing this,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a cat or a dog chasing his tail in my brain sometimes, trying to sort all that out.
I understand that. When I was working in my career differently than coon hunting, the way I kind of rationalized that was, I would get everything done when I got home from work that I needed to do at home, and then when the kids went to bed, then I'd go hunting and still try to get up 5 o'clock in the morning, and did that for several years. And looking back, I don't know how I did that, but I did.
Could you do it now?
No, no. But I did look, and my lifetime earnings are $29,791.
Yeah.
But none of that in the last 11 years or so.
Yeah. We just ask everybody, but I mean that's a chunk of change to make off of coon hunting.
Yeah.
So
coon hunting's been good to me. A lot of people say, jokingly and sometime in all seriousness, say, if you think you're going to make a living at coon hunting, or if you think you're going to make money at coon hunting, you should do something else. But I would have to say, from the time I got my first dog, I think when I was 15 or so, until today, I'm very much in the black.
Mm-hmm.
I've made a lot more money with coon dogs. Started out selling coon hides, and sold puppies, and won money in hunts. If you add all that together plus what I spent, I'm still in the black.
Well, would you have even been able to be qualified for your professional life for the last 17 years if you hadn't been coon hunting? So
right, yeah.
You take all those that have put a roof over your head and fed your family too.
Yeah, the coon hunters and registries have helped me and my family, carry out our normal life for 17 years, and that's a pretty important thing.
I agree. So, all right, you've been in the business for 17 years. What's some of the most significant changes you've seen in competition coon hunting from? Let's even take it back to when you entered that first event back in the 80s to where it's at today.
Well, if I would say what's the biggest difference between going to a competition coon hunting in the 80s versus today, I guess you could look at it from two aspects. One is the dogs, and the other's everything else.
Yeah. And
from the dogs, the biggest change that I see is the style of dogs. When I started being successful in coon hunts, and I should say somewhat successful, when I entered my first coon hunt, and I think it was 1982, somewhere around there. Of course, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. And by the time that I figured out what I was doing and started actually winning was probably in the late 80s. And the biggest difference was I found out pretty quick that pretty much all the dogs hunted together, struck together, treed together, and it was a calling contest most of the time about who was going to get struck first and who was going to get treed first. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty wide open with the strike. You can kind of get by with making a mistake there, but if you make a mistake on that tree call, then you may cost you to lose the cast just on one calling contest on one tree may cause you to lose the cast or win the cast. And I didn't really like that. And so the one thing that I felt like I had an advantage at is the dogs that I was raising at that time, starting with my original Annie female, were naturally independent. And they just really didn't care to tree with other dogs. If they were on the same track and they treed first or the other dog treed first, it really didn't matter. They would be there. But if they had an opportunity to get away from the other dogs at any point, or if there was more than one coon that they were running or in the area, they would be separate. And that was a huge advantage at that time. And, I could maybe hunting 6 or 8 competition casts in a row, and I might have the only independent dog in any of those. The difference nowadays is that every one of them are going to be like that.
Right. So do you think that when you first started hunting the Ann female on those hunts, the rest of the dogs in the cast, I can think of a million ways that a dog could get split off. Maybe 2 out of the dogs aren't hunting over 50 yards from you or 100 yards from you. Maybe somebody back in those days, it wasn't unusual to draw guys in a cast that would tell you that my dog will check back in. Mm-hmm. It wasn't unusual to say my dog will meet me out. He'll meet us off the tree. That was the old standard rule.
Oh yeah, just about every cast
to cover themselves from getting those. My dog might meet us off the tree. Now you never hear that in a cast. Right. You never hear that. It's like, man, we're going to gut ourselves walking a mile through there, and he's going to be on the wood when we get there.
Right.
I mean, that's it. So yeah, I see a big difference in the types of dogs.
Sure. And I would say that's the biggest difference in competing with the dogs themselves, is how wild the hunters there are nowadays and how every dog is independent. It's pretty odd to handle more than one dog on a tree unless, they tree a coon right out of the truck or something.
Yeah.
But the biggest difference overall, I would say, is the technology. I first started in the hunts. You were pretty well stuck with if you lost your dog, that you either went out and looked for it or you threw your coat down and came back the next day.
Right.
But by the mid '80s, I had one of the Johnson's systems, and then later on some wildlife systems of the telemetry trackers, and that kind of gradually went on. I realized there's been a lot of change in technology and lights, but I don't really consider that to be such a huge change because everybody's carrying pretty much the same thing.
Right.
It started out, you had a wheat light or a hot light that they called it, a wheat light battery or a wheat light head and a gel cell battery. But thing is, pretty well everybody had the same thing. Mm-hmm. So so that although those have changed, it's pretty well stayed level as far as what everybody had. Nowadays, some people got thermals, some don't. Sometimes those help. Sometimes they get in situations where it's so hot, they don't really help a lot. But as far as technology, probably the number one thing is the ability to have that handheld Garmin or whatever brand you're using and see where your dog is at all times. And it's just amazing to me that is the situation now versus so many years ago that if your dog wasn't barking, you had no clue where it was.
Right.
And now you know exactly where it is. Not only distance, but you can look at your map and see if he's in a woods, on a creek, in a field, by a house.
Yeah,
whatever.
that's a whole we need to do a podcast on winning strategies about how to use that Garmin and keep yourself in a position to win.
Yeah.
But, okay, so going back to the dogs that you started hunting, do you think they could compete today? Do they possess that style to do that?
I think the best ones, the best ones I had could.
I know I'm asking you the deader the better question.
Yeah.
But do you think the style of those dogs?
Well, I would answer that this way. The Jenny female that I had is very stereotypical of what's winning nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
She was wild. She was by herself. She would run the edge of fields instead of going in the woods, and she would ambush coons. And I'd say she would compete on any level nowadays with what's out there by doing the same thing they're doing, just doing it also, and maybe sometimes doing it better. But the Ann 2 female that I was talking about, I think would compete nowadays for a different reason. She wasn't what I would call an extremely wild hunter. She wasn't what I'd call fiercely independent, although, if she struck a track and the other dogs went the other way, she would tree hers. If there was more than one coon, she tried to be by herself. But she's the type of dog that could tree a layup coon. She could trail up an old coon. She could run a hot coon, and she would, she'd look for a coon as soon as you turned her loose. So
Mm-hmm.
she could possibly tree some coons on the way to some of those other dogs. And I think, in my opinion, I think some of the smart hunters, handlers, are going to realize in the near future here what advantage there would be or can be to having a dog that trees coons close to you. And I could be dead wrong about this, but I see that coming somewhat full circle. I mean, there's always going to be guys that enjoy the wild type of dogs that's being promoted now. I mean, I'm not saying they're going away. What I'm saying is that some guys are going to figure out they can beat those kind of dogs with a different style of dog.
Do you think the way hunting is going, especially here in the Midwest, Indiana's a hotbed for coon hunting, no doubt, but it's also one of the lowest. We hold the least amount of public land. I think we're like number 47 out of 50 states on the amount of public land. So that means this is all privately controlled land. The old farms that you and I used to hunt, that nobody cared if we hunted there, they've either been sold and broken up into parcels, or they've changed hands, or they're under a lease or something like that. And I see all of that kind of stuff ultimately affecting the future of the style of hound that we hunt.
Yeah, and I was just telling some guys the other day, during the Labor Day Classic, they asked me if I had a place they could guide a cast, and I said, I'll be honest with you, 10 years ago, I had probably 15 to 18 places I could guide a 2-hour cast and feel real comfortable about it. And I probably had another 25 that I could take a 1-hour cast anytime I wanted and not have a problem. I said, right now, I've got one place I could probably guide a 1-hour cast. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't have a place I could take a 2-hour cast. Now, part of that's because I haven't really been doing it, so I'm not I haven't been asking a lot of people permission, to be honest about it. But I'm just saying based on what I used to have versus what I have now.
Right.
And I'll give you a real short example that really spells out what you were talking about as far as losing hunting ground to deer hunting and cut up farms and this and that. Since my surgery, I've been walking every morning and every evening. And I've got a little walker pup that I take with me, and once in a while I'll take my squirrel dog. Well, 2 days ago, I took my morning walk, and I just on my own property here, and the squirrel dog skipped off there and went across the property line probably 40 yards and treated a squirrel. I walked over there, looked up and seen the squirrel, said, good boy, put a lead on him, walked back, came back to the house, put the dogs away, was getting ready to put a bale of hay out for the cows, and here comes a truck flying in the driveway, 90 mile an hour, and guy all mad because I showed up on his automatic
cellular phone game camera.
So there you go. Cellular phone game camera. It beeped on his phone that something was in front of his camera, and he looked and it was me. And he was madder than a hornet that I was over there on his property. And he wondered why I didn't call him. And it took me 2 minutes to walk over there and get that dog and come back. And had I known he would be upset about it, I'd have called him. But logic would tell you he wouldn't be. I didn't even have a gun with me.
Yeah.
So anyway, that kind of a prime example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and we're going to have to figure out a way to deal with that in some form, shape, or fashion, because cellular phones, they're not even running. I know people that aren't even actually running the game camera now. They're putting home security camera type stuff that's weatherproof because they're cheaper than your game camera. And I don't know how these guys get any sleep because those cameras are going off, and I've gotten phone calls. It's like, hey, are you on my property? It's like, yeah, I'm on your property. But what are you doing? Sitting around looking at that thing 24/7?
Well, I think they got an alert that pops up on their phone, and they're all excited because they're going to look at it and see a big deer.
Right.
And here's Chris Powell, and boy, they're disappointed.
Yeah. They should be. They should be. So a lot of changes. So some of the things that I wanted to talk about, Jerry, was you're getting ready to retire and hang it up, and I want to talk about some of the successful programs that you've been a part of, and things that you think are good news on the horizon for of hunters too. Some things that may not have taken full hold yet, but you've kind of got the vaccine story and some of the intent of why some of those programs were put in place, but it just hasn't developed yet or hadn't shown itself. So you can kind of give us the backstory on some of that and some of the intent and what the vision was with some of those programs maybe.
Well, I guess starting with the things at AKC, like I said, we started, when we got started, we looked at their old rules, and we started trying to figure out how we were going to fix them or change them or what. And I think at some point in that mix, we said, let's just pretty much scrap them.
Yeah, let's burn them.
And so we started over. And so with working with with hunting in UKC for years and hunting in PKC for years, of course, I had a lot of ideas about, how things could be better. Now, whether I was right or not,
we all do.
Is a whole different thing. But it gave me an opportunity to lay them out on the table, and ended up in the rules, and some of them didn't. And I think that was satisfying that program was taking off with something new like that. And but granted, there's new registries popping up every year, and they're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, they're starting out with, the basic rules that we've all hunted against our whole lives.
Right.
Sure, there's a few changes, but you know, since the 50s, we all been kind of hunting under the same rules.
We've just tweaked them and developed them, and
Right,
you know,
right.
the same way we have our hounds. You know,
Sure.
yeah.
And so I'm not trying to say anything was revolutionary. It was more evolutionary.
Right.
And so until we got whacked with all that pause stuff, and it really hurt the AKC program. We were getting a pretty good head of steam. So that was satisfying at the time. And probably with PKC, what I feel like I've been able to do is to not necessarily change the rules, but to rewrite some that were easier to understand and easier to implement and easier to enforce. And over the years, and as far as the rules themselves, I hope that have been more of an educator, over the last 10 years, 11 years to people that were used to going to hunts and whatever the other guy said on the cast, then that's what they took as how the rules were. Mm-hmm. And what my main emphasis was, maybe not. Read the rule yourself. Try to match it up with what's actually going on in the woods, and keep it in your mind that way instead of paying attention to what a lot of people say. Because believe it or not, sometimes people will say whatever they need to say to their advantage.
Really?
Yep. People will do that.
Sounds a lot like being a game warden to some extent. You go down to the local coffee shop or the local, sporting goods store, and everybody in there's got an interpretation of what the actual hunting rules are, and then they run into me, and the first thing, well, we were talking down the other day down at so-and-so, and they said this. Well, that's not what the law says. So I was very much the same way. Let's look at the law. I mean, you can even take the daggone hunting guide in the state of Indiana and misinterpret that thing. So I always referred people to the law, not a editorialized version that's written for general information. I'd show people the law. Same way with you.
And there's some of them that are very basic, and the one rule is constantly misunderstood, and it's due to two things, I believe. One is that other registries are different. Number two, people believe what they hear instead of what they read, and that it's a tie-breaking rule. And the reason I say it's probably the easiest rule is just because when you read it, it's black and white. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mm-hmm. If you read the scorecard and what everybody has, and you compare it to that rule, there's no room for error.
Right.
But yet, still get 2 or 3 calls a week about, hey, I thought I won this cast. They said I didn't win this cast. So I mean, it's just something that I don't know if it's human nature. It might be men because we don't read directions, but there's something about people not wanting to read those rules. Mm-hmm. I'm not smart enough to know exactly all the reasons, but they have reasons.
Well, I mean, it's like you could show somebody a book that gives them factual information that's backed up by footnotes and all kinds of things, and it's all put in the back, and hand that book to somebody about what coon dog to breed to, and they won't read that. They'll go on Facebook and ask 25 other people, what dog do you think I should breed to? Well, I just gave you a book. Why are you asking the question? I just gave you the book. It's all there. It's going to give you the answer. I don't know either. I don't get it. I think some of it's because we like discussing and debating with our friends, and mm-hmm. and we're also trying to find our own way. I don't know. I'm not smart enough either, Jerry. But yeah. What else you got?
Well, you were asking about new programs, and really there hasn't been that many really new programs. Some of the stuff that I've been involved in the last 11 years that was kind of new we had started the whole doubleheader idea at AKC, and it had already started to be implemented at PKC, I think about the time I started. And that's been successful, the weekend doubleheader hunts.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I kind of got going, and Bobby Wilson from down at DuPont kind of pushed me on it to get the numbers down and to present it to Roger Dale, and that was taking the $25 hunts to $30 hunts. And the main reason behind that was, at that time, the weeknight hunts were drawn better, and you might draw 5 or 6 casts. Well, the only people that got paid were the top 4 cast winners. The other 2 didn't get anything. So the idea was at least those other two cast winners would get their money back. And, of course, once we started that, the $25 hunts just went away.
And they get their money. They not only get their money back, but those earnings go.
Those are state and breed earnings as well. Yes.
Yeah. So they're not showing up on a weeknight cast. Get there and there's 5 casts and you don't get in. And it's like, well, nothing for me.
And I've been to many, weeknight hunts where, you win your cast just like everybody else did, but you didn't get anything for it. So that was kind of a shot in the arm. I think that the people at first, they didn't like the idea of the extra $5, but once they realized they could get cast win earnings. Nowadays,
there's enough of them that came in 5th and 6th now that they kind of like it.
Yeah. The problem is nowadays the way things have gotten, weeknight hunts aren't drawn many more than 4 casts. So the value of it's not as obvious as it used to be. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I kind of pushed for was the cast win payouts at the World Hunting Super Stakes, to where the entry fee was raised, but you were guaranteed if you won at least 1 cast, you would get your entry fee back. And that, in my opinion, has been a big boost to those hunts, allowing people to play a little longer. If you go there, years ago, if you went to the World Hunt and you won early and got beat all 4 nights, you were just out of all that money. Right. Whereas now, at least if you go Monday night and you get beat, then you can enter the next night sort of for free, so the expenses aren't so hard on you.
Right. If you win your early round, you get beat in the late round, you still got your entry fee for tomorrow night.
That's right.
Yep. So as long as you can win your early rounds, you can keep playing
and keep living.
Yep. That's I always like that.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I kind of push for was the legacy hunts. And some people like them, some people don't. It's one of those things. But the advantages that were the reasons that I pushed for them was because there were so many of these big added purse open events that so much of the awards money went to the top 4 scoring cast winners, high scoring cast winners, that there was a lot of incentive there to do some things that were not by the book to get those scores higher. Whether that mean coercing people into withdrawing, talking them into withdrawing, paying them to withdraw, or helping them in whatever those ways to help you inflate your score. And those were the people that were getting in. So, for example, just say you went to the Spring Classic or Labor Day Classic or Michigan Madness, and your dog looked as good as it could have. You were excited. You scored 700 points. It's the first time you ever did it. You go back in there, and you don't even get close to getting in the Final Four. And the guys that did get in the Final Four over in the corner laughing about it, and you get a pretty quick idea what really happened. Mm-hmm. Well, you're probably not going to come back.
Right.
And that hurts the entries, and it hurts the registry, hurts the club, hurts everybody. And with the legacy hunts, it's elimination only. So you win your cast, you advance. It doesn't matter if you've got 0, 500 minus, or 500 plus. Mm-hmm. You advance. And to me, that's more of a true test, or whatever you want to call it, to get the winners of the hunt. And it makes people feel like they're And there again, if you win your cast and you don't get beat or you don't win the late round, you get your money entry fee back, and you can play longer.
Right.
And all you've got to do is beat the dogs you're in the woods with, not the ones that are in different casts.
Yep.
So, again, there's some people that don't like the legacy hunts. I'm not trying to make it sound like they're the best thing since sliced bread, but in my opinion, that they pay the club better, they pay the hunters better, and it's a more fair system.
Yeah, I like it. You got anything else?
That's about it.
All right. So looking back over your career, if you could change one thing about competition coon hunting, what would it be?
If I could wave a magic wand and change one thing, regardless of what registry they're hunting in and what they're competing in, would be to get rid of the negativity in the sport. And along with that negativity, I guess to kind of encapsulate the negativity that I'm talking about is just say when Jake was 10 years old and you took him to a hunt, the things you experience on the grounds at that hunt there's some things that you would not want to expose your son to. And I call that whole bunch of things negativity, and whether that's vulgarity or cheating or whatever you want,
right?
Putting other people down, putting other people's dogs down. I mean, everything you can lump into negativity.
You're contributing to a negative environment where you're at, and I mean that's the story. I'm not going to call it out which event it was or anything like that, but that was the final straw for me for competition coon hunting. Is I was at an event and there were ladies present and there was no regard for their presence. And I looked around and I thought, what am I doing here? Spending my money to be here. I would rather spend my money and go for the money I'm spending right here. I can go travel and hunt with people that I know that share my values and things like that. And I think that's the last event that I actually entered. And there had been other things when I was raising my kids, Jerry, that I was really involved in, that when it got to that, I'd look at the people that were there and it's like, well, I don't want to raise my family in this environment. So, but the negativity, I mean, do you think it outweighs the positive things that actually go on, or?
No, the one thing that has always been a puzzle to me is that when a coon hunter is in need, there is no better friends than other coon hunters. And the best example that I have about that, because you were involved in it, is when my daughter Bethany was diagnosed with cancer. The area clubs and individual coon hunters came out of the woodwork to help me.
Yeah.
And even people from outside this area, states away, would send stuff to help.
Yep.
And that's why I think a lot of the negativity that I'm talking about is just part of the atmosphere that we currently have, and I don't really know how to change that atmosphere. In other words, I'm not saying those people are naturally negative people.
Yeah.
But when they get in that environment, that's what happens.
Do you think it's because we are so passionate about this thing and we know what it can be, so it's kind of a disappointment to us that it's going on? And for me, I think, as we talk about it and I talk through it here, it's like, man, this could be such a great thing. This could be a good place for families, and we could do things for veterans and children's hospitals and everything else. But when you show up and you act like that, I don't want my kid listening to that. My wife's not going to feel comfortable here. So now I've got to make a decision based on, do I take my kids on vacation or do I go to a competition coon hunt? And if I could do both, if I could go to a competition coon hunt and make it fun and be the type of environment, that'd be great. And it's not like this everywhere you go, but at the same time, I want it to be that way so bad, so when I see it, then maybe I inflate it of how bad it actually is.
Probably, yeah.
Yep. Because I want it to be great.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, crap, it's not, you know?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that you could get the wrong impression about real quick, and that's why I'm glad you brought the other side up or asked me about whether it's really that way or really whether it just looks that way, is because many of the people that I see involved in maybe that negativity or vulgarity or whatever, I know those people, and I know they're really not that much like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not in that environment, and they're in a different environment where I've seen them, they're not like that at all.
Exactly. I know. I've seen it too.
So it's hard to describe because that environment perpetuates. You know, the one way I guess I've described it over the years is if you work in a construction crew, whether it's framing houses or laying brick or pouring concrete, whatever. When you first start in there, you may not think so, but within a couple of weeks, you're going to be acting just like they act, however that is, whether that's good or bad. And those kind of groups that use the best. And sometimes a factory worker could be the same thing. Mm-hmm. And the example that you gave of being at that hunt with women around, I'll bet those guys weren't even thinking about it.
They weren't.
Because they were in that environment and they were just cutting loose.
And you know, we don't want to keep going on this too far, but I'll say this positively about it. Years ago, we were hunting at a hunt somewhere. It was a big event, and there was, you know, some of the same crowd was there, and they, you know, you're like, man, you know, I don't like that guy very well. I don't like the way he's acting. And as the cast left, got out on the state road, and there was an accident out on the state road, and the police weren't there. And these guys that I had made this judgment about, this character judgment about, mm-hmm. they were pulled off of the road, delaying their own cast and helping the people that needed help. So, yeah, we talk about that sort of stuff, but we got to be careful. We have to be so careful when we start, you know, trying to lump in everybody into that. I still love going to the events. I was at Autumn Oaks and saw old friends and stuff like that. And so when you look at both sides of that, like you said, when you're in need, man, these people will step up.
The heart of the coon hunter knows no bounds.
Right. I agree. All right, let's see what we got for this one. Advice for hunters who want to be successful in competition. You got a new guy, and he's got his dog, and he's been hunting, and he's all pumped up, and he's going to his first event. And if he wants to be the next, you know, Josh Michaelis of the coon hunting world. I'll put that in there since Josh isn't with us. So what do you tell him?
Well, aside from getting that dog ready, knowing and understanding the rules as an individual, not trying so hard to take in all this information from other people, but to understand the rules and how to apply how they're hunting that dog and getting them ready to compete under those rules, I think is a very important thing. I would say to take what they see and hear from other people about how to do that with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. Because I know growing up in the sport, I had a lot of input from other people, and a lot of it wasn't very good. And they meant well, but it really wasn't helpful. Mm-hmm. In fact, it took some things the wrong direction.
But how does a young hunter learn that stuff? How does he get there?
And that I would say the best way to sort that out is when you hear something or see something that you're saying, I'm not sure if that's right. Then that's when you consult your rule book and see if it's right.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you don't have to go back to them other people and argue with them and tell them they're wrong. You just go about your business and do it the right way. And there also will be some handlers as you're coming up in the ranks that are going to tell you, in order to pull the wool over these guys' eyes and get by with this, you need to do this. And you always got to argue. There's people that will tell you always have to argue for your dog and stick up for your dog. No, you don't. That's what the rules are for. If you deserve a minus under the rules, then take your minus. If you deserve plus or circle, take that too. You don't have to argue for your dog constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to make it that way. And if you don't make it that way, you'll enjoy the competition hunting a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take the other advice I would give them is that after every competition hunt, take note. What could my dog have done differently to win that cast? And what could I have done differently as a handler to win the cast? And those are the things you work on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you leave the cast thinking, I'm upset, I'm mad, them guys screwed me out of this way and that way, and whatever, you're not going to get better as a handler, and your dog's not going to get better. So if you can somehow turn that into, what could I have done different, or what could my dog have done different, and see if you can, get yourself and the dog to do that, then it really, a lot of times it doesn't matter what the other guy does. If your dog trees enough coons, they can't do much to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the advice I would give.
Yeah, we used to do the same thing in military operations or law enforcement. You have a debriefing after it was over, and you talk about the things that you would do the same, things you would change,
Yeah.
And I do that when I'm just out hunting, with the hound. I look at it and I'm like, okay, I always evaluate the last tree or the last drop. So.
Yeah. Yeah, if you get beat, you have to go in there and catch your dog after the hunt. While you're leading your dog to the woods, just have a discussion with him about what you two could have done different.
I'll tell you, I think the biggest myth about competition hunting, if you get cheated, there's only one person to blame. And this is not the myth, but we hear the myth, I got cheated, so I'll never go back. If you got cheated, 9 times out of 10, there's only one person to blame, and it's that person that's looking you back in the mirror, because all the rules are set up to be able to question that. You did something within that cast that allowed somebody to take advantage of the situation. There's some legitimate stuff, but
yeah, I'd say for the most part that's true. I mean, there's some ways that you can be cheated that there's nothing you can do about.
I agree.
And there's some ways that people can try to cheat you that you can do something about and prevent.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it falls into one of those two categories. If you draw out in a 4-dog cast with 3 buddies and they've determined which one of them are going to win before you turn loose, and it's not going to be you, there's not a lot you can do. Sure, you can question stuff. You can ask for a cast vote. You can question it, and you can take it back to the panel. But if they're going to cheat you, they're going to lie in the panel, and you're not. If you write them up for misconduct, when they send their statement in, they're going to lie. Mm-hmm. If you go back to the panel and tell them what happened, they're going to lie.
Mm-hmm. But if you have a dog that trees more raccoons than their dog because you're prepared and you did that part of it, they're going to have a harder time.
They'll have a harder time. But if they get together and they choose, they're not going to see those raccoons your dog. Yeah. There's not a whole lot you can do.
3 blind mice.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to paint the picture that happens more than the other. I would say, by and large, if you get beat and feel like you got cheated, you probably didn't do everything you could do. I would agree with that 100%.
I guess.
Is that all the time? No.
Just my personal experience. Looking back, I entered my first competition hunt in 1983, and I can't remember. I can't remember hardly. I can't recall any specific time that I didn't look back at the situation and couldn't find a way that I could have been successful or won that cast. If either I needed a better dog, I needed to hunt more, I should have known that rule that I got manipulated on, or I didn't understand. Mm-hmm. There was always something in there that I personally could have done to either better my chances or made me successful.
I would agree. The vast majority are going to fall in that category.
Yeah.
You're going to, if you hunt very long, you're going to eventually get cheated in a way there's nothing you can do about. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't happen very often.
Not very often. It's a rare thing, and it just seems like the reason I brought that up is because it seems like anytime somebody, Old Blue always looks good back here on the creek. When you're just out here, you and Old Blue, it's like, man, I could take that dog to town. I know I could just win. And you've got all these expectations, and then you get there, and instead of saying, Old Blue isn't the dog that I thought it was, I got cheated.
Yep.
I got cheated. So
that is 100% true.
Yep. So, Jerry, what's the plans for the future? What kind of plans you got for the future? You gonna start coon hunting again?
Yes, I definitely will. Now, whether I compete in another competition hunt, I don't know. But I guess it just depends number one, how good my dogs get. Number two, if I get bit by the bug, making me want to do it again.
Yeah.
But I do have a young dog that I'm going to work this season, and already started working on her some, and I've got a squirrel dog, so I plan on spending a lot of woods time in the day and night. Between me and Brenda, we got probably list of things that need done around the farm that I need to do, and I'll probably get some more cows, and probably do a little bit of traveling, not to hunts, but regular like vacation traveling. And because we haven't done a lot of that, and
but you found ways. Brenda, there have been several times when you've been on the road going somewhere, and I call you and Brenda would be with you.
Oh yeah, and I've told other people this. If it wouldn't be for the fact that Brenda did go with me quite a bit over the last several years, I probably would have had to make this decision a long time ago, just because it helped ease the pain. As far as being away from home that much and traveling that much away from home, and having my wife with me, it was a blessing.
Yeah, good deal. So you going to breed any more litters at Salt Creek Dream Walkers?
That's yet to be determined too, but I still have some frozen semen on the old socket dog, so I'll probably be raising some, probably not a lot.
You going to breed him to any blue ticks?
I might. You never know.
Oh, well, we could do a whole episode on Salt Creek Walkers and the impact that you've had just on breeding Dream Walkers, Jerry. I hope you get back into it. You've got a lot of knowledge on that and a lot of good history. So hope you get back to breeding some of those dogs.
Yeah, I'll probably do some, just not to a large extent.
Right. Well, you got anything else?
Nope. I appreciate being a part of this again. And
you going to drop off the radar for a while?
I'll probably be on the radar, but just a blip every once in a while.
All right, good deal, man. Well, Jerry, I appreciate you taking time and sitting down with us and sharing your story, and appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you.
Well, until next time, Jerry, you follow your hounds, I'll follow mine.
Sounds good.
And your squirrel dog, follow your squirrel dog, too. All right.